Hello and well met. This is Layron with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. Today we're going to check out the maps. We're going to kind of deconstruct the map that we have right now. We've left this off in episode 3 where we were kind of messing around with the encounters, building NPCs, that sort of thing. So this is going to kind of segue out from the original first 3 series. I really thought I was going to get it done in 3, but actually there is a lot to cover. So what I'd like to do is focus more on the maps, like how to set them up, how to place them, that sort of thing. So I'm going to take the map that I have right now and kind of deconstruct it because we've already had a previous series. So if you haven't watched those first 3 episodes, recommend you do if you want some more context. But nonetheless, this is going to focus more on the map side of things and how to place the encounters and that sort of thing. So let's get into this. So right now, I have 3 NPCs on the actual combat tracker, and I have our infamous character here, Arla Ravenshade. She is on the map as well. Her objective is to get through this obstacle without being caught, and that's really the whole scenario. We also created tables to allow for a little bit of change up in the actual the way we play this. So if we play it again and again, it's a little different. Also, I'd like to mention that a lot of this content that I have is third party. So this map was made by Chris of Game Tile Warehouse. The tokens I made kind of myself using a open or a AI program, Midjourney, and then the NPCs were actually generated by ChatGPT. Of course, my guidance and such, but nonetheless, that's kind of some of the tools I've used to create all this stuff. So all that is in the previous videos, and it's also in the links. So without further ado, let's check this out. So right now, like I said, I have this combat tracker. The combatants or the actual participants are on the map. To get into the properties of the map, we're going to have to unlock it. So you click on this little lock up here, and that will unlock the map. And then you can see over here where the play options are on the far right, have the enabled player vision, we have the line of sight turned on, we have lighting turned on, and token lock. So when you're the GM, the token lock doesn't really lock unless you hold the Alt key down, which will basically emulate the way a player moves. And we'll get into more of the play type stuff in another episode. But what I want to do is deconstruct the map. So first of all, I'm going to take the NPCs off. So I have 2 Night Watch, and then I have Wortimer here, who's the Night Watch captain. So what I'm going to do is right click, and you'll see delete token button. And then you can delete all the tokens or just the single one. So I want to delete all the tokens for right now. And that includes the player token. So that's going to get rid of everything off the map. So that way they're no longer attached to this map anymore. And then all of this stuff in the, I'll leave this stuff in the combat tracker for now, but I'm going to deconstruct that too before we start the a combat video in another episode. So then now what I'm going to do is go ahead and deconstruct the map that I've made, or the line of sight, I should say, and all the lighting. So I'm going to go to the line of sight tool, and you can see here's all the line of sight. It's really all just terrain. I might change this up in the next iteration when I start doing this, because this is way too complex. And as you can see, there's spots here that are not done very well. And this is the kind of thing you want to avoid if you can help it. Like there's no reason to have all of this like this. I was hoping to perhaps create some complexity so that in case Arla goes on the rooftop, they won't be able to see her. But since I'm running the actual encounter for either myself or just 1 or 2 players, I don't really need this much complexity. I think this was overkill. So I'm going to actually start over with the map, and this will give you an idea of also how to do your own. So the first thing I'm going to do is unlock the map, because I have it locked so it doesn't move or I don't accidentally delete any of the features. And then what I can do is right click. And if you right click on this map, you can export the metadata, which is all these points and all the areas where you have put the occluders. So if you want to save or preserve this, you could by exporting this. But what you have to do is you have to use that data along with the map in a same folder. And if you load that again, it'll keep your settings. But that's for another show. But nonetheless, that's how you would preserve it if you wanted to. Especially if it's a map that you've imported yourself. And you can see I didn't do a very good job with this. This is kind of a rush job. So I'm not really happy with this. I think it's overly complex. It doesn't need to be this crazy. And I really think I should spend less time on the line of sight and more time on actually just trying to get the encounter set up. So what I'm going to do is remove all of this stuff that I've put on here in the previous work that I've done. And I haven't shown this out all the way through, so that's why I made this episode, so that we can show you how this is done. So this is essentially not a good way to detail this map. It's not very clean. It's got a lot of inconsistencies. It's just stuff here that doesn't need to be there. So I'm going to go ahead and go to, on the far right, the campaign folder under images. This images is third party, so I can kind of mess with it. And then if you want to see anything that you've shared or anything like that, you can use this all filter, which will basically share or show you, filter out the maps that's shared. So this map is actually shared right now. It's public. So what I'm going to do is right click, and what you can do is revert changes. So these little arrows here allows you to reset the map. So anything that I've added to it is going to get reset. So we should see the lines could disappear essentially, and all the line of sight, this little brick wall thing here should go away. So if I right click and go to revert changes, that resets the map back to normal. So if you have a purchased map that you purchased on the Fantasy Grounds store, something official, it will not delete anything. It'll just clear off any changes that you've made to it, and then it will reset it back to factory. And if it doesn't, all you have to do is reload the module or reshare the image. It's not the end of the world. So I went ahead and cleared that. Now I want to unshare the image. So to unshare any image that you've already shared, you can either go to that list like here and click on this little P for public, which is basically telling you, or it's a flag, it's telling you that this is shared out to your table. When you're done with images, you want to unshare them so as to free up memory, because even if you're not using this map and you have it shared, it's still transmitting data back and forth between your computer and the player. So go ahead and right click on this, and we can unshare this. So, or you can right click on an image itself, and you can go to sharing and then click on stop sharing record. And as you can see, it disappears from here because it's no longer a shared image. So that is something that you can do to kind of reset, kind of go backwards. And it's good to know these steps just in case you need to start over, or you want a clean slate. So that's a way that you can clear it. So this map is totally cleared. And I'm actually starting to think that I don't even want to use this map. Maybe you want to change this over. So I'm going to mix this up. So I'm going to close this map. This module happens to come with a random table that'll help you select a map. So I want to roll on this table and see what the result is. So I'm just going to roll. So I was thinking that maybe you can include this in your encounters if you have more than one map. I don't think you need quite this many, but it'd be nice to have a certain amount of maps available, maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 variations. 3 is a good number. And then I'm going to take and click on this, and here is the next map that I'm going to use for the encounter. So this one is similar. It's still got the alleyways and the rooftops. It's really nicely painted. And this one's actually a little bit more complex. So I kind of like this actually better than the one that we had before. So I'm going to use this map for this encounter and then kind of stick with it, I think, for the rest of the series. So we use the other map to kind of show some basic stuff, and now we're going to use this for the line of sight. So actually, this is one of my favorite maps. I've seen this one before. I actually really enjoy it, and I like these flower beds. You can actually say that there might be a place where you can hide, and you got these barrels and such, and then these chimneys, you can hide behind those possibly. So let's get into this. So I'm going to go ahead and start taking a look at the map. So essentially, the map itself is not set up for any kind of line of sight or any sort of lighting. So I want to first turn on the light. So essentially, I'm going to make it to where the sun actually is on. So I'm going to unlock the map. I'm going to unlock this map here, which is the actual layer that this map is on. And I'm going to go over to lighting and click on this little ambient lighting symbol. And I'm going to pick what type of day, what time of day it is. So I think I'm going to make it dusk or maybe even dawn, but here's dusk. And it doesn't show anything yet because I don't have it turned on inside of the actual play mode. So that's the next step. But now if I go to play mode, and if I turn on this enable or disable lighting, you'll see the map kind of dimmed a little bit, and it just kind of gives you a rough idea of what the lighting is going to do to the map. So it kind of made it just a little bit darker. And as you can see, this map already has shadows kind of baked into it. So I'm going to follow that pattern when I actually set up the line of sight. So once I have all the occluders in here, I'm going to take that and I'm going to make it so that the trees and whatever else is reflecting is going to follow the rough direction of the shadow that comes off the building. I kind of want to follow the artist because I don't want overlapping shadows where one shadow's going one direction and one's going the other. So next thing I'm going to do is kind of decide which ones I want to tackle first. So I think I'm going to go with terrain. I think that's the most useful in this case. And there isn't any really indoor things. And all these areas here are accessible if you climb the walls and stuff. So I'm just going to be using basically mostly terrain and maybe a couple shadow casts. So first things first is I'm going to first grab the line of sight tool. So that's up here with this brick wall. And I'm going to go to the rectangle tool. And anything that's kind of rectangular that I want to put line of sight on, I'm going to use that tool now. So it's ideal if you have a certain tool in mind and you go around and take care of the stuff that is rectangular in nature. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go around these chimneys, and then I might go over here to just this balcony level here, just kind of give it a little bit of height difference essentially from the stucco part. So I want to take and grab and go with the rectangle tool. And all I'm going to do is kind of go through the center of these and just kind of draw this line. And right now it's in the wall tool. So I want to actually be in the terrain tool. I could put a wall around those, but I think if you climb on top of it and that sort of thing, so that's why I'm not going. So I'm just left click and drag, and that's going to create a square here. And they don't have to be perfect. That's another thing when you're doing this type of work. You don't have to be exactly perfect. Okay, so there's that. And now, like I said, I'm going to make this area over here a big rectangle because this is basically going to represent another level of the map. So again, I'm just going to left click and drag until I get this kind of rectangular shape. And you notice I'm not going right to the edge, kind of staying in the center of the wall. So if you look at this, it's just kind of, it's not perfect. And then each one of these areas shows little points of egress. So maybe if Arla does become, trapped and she needs to climb up on something, she'll be able to. And then these two are obviously two separate levels, and this one's a little bit higher. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to put a dividing line here so that it kind of illustrates the actual elevation. So I'm going to go ahead and grab just the line tool. And when you're creating lines in Fantasy Grounds, if you hold down the Shift key and when you start your line, it'll actually create a straighter line. So if I left click and drag the line over, as you can see, it's kind of loppy, and you got to try to do it perfectly by hand. But if you hold the Shift key, it actually makes the line straighter. And I'm just going to double click the end of the line. And what I'm looking for is these little vertices. So I want those to actually be there. I'm not going to worry about the lines that are reaching over just. And I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to hold down the Shift key, left click and drag, double click to end the line. So what that's doing is creating these vertices, and then later on I can come back and clean up these little tails. All I wanted was a little bit of separation between these three areas because this area up here is actually a little taller than the rest of this, so that's why I did that. Now over here, this rooftop, I'm just going to draw it with a line tool, since it's not perfectly rectangular, but except for maybe that chimney. So I'll grab this and make this chimney a square using the rectangle tool. And then if I'm going to look for any other chimneys on here, so it looks like I got them all. So now I'm just going to use the rectangle or the line tool and put more line of sight on this building. And again, I don't have to be perfect, but if you want a straighter line, hold the shift key and make your point, and then you can let go. And what I'm going to do here is just click on this point up here and then click down here, and then I'm going to hold the shift key again so that the line is straight, and then just click to end the line or to point a point down, and just double click on this last point, and that should take care of it. That is essential, and I hit escape to get out of that. So there's this here. Now you could put a line between this to have different sides of the building. So I might do that just for a little bit of complexity. So I'm just going to join these two dots together. So I'm in the line tool still. So it's on snap to grid, so it should automatically try to pick up that point, and then just double click on this other point, and that completes that line. So there's a kind of a rooftop where you can toggle these two panels depending on what side of the roof the rogue is on. And then you also have an area where you can hide behind this well, not really hide, but have an area that kind of blocks shadow. So that's that. And I'm going to do kind of the same thing on this building right here, except for I'm just going to follow the contour roughly around it. I'm not going to be exactly perfect, except for on these lines on the far right, where I'm going to actually click and hold down the shift key. So again, I'm in the line tool and the terrain tools. Important to remember what tool you're in, so you're actually drawing the correct type of lines and the type of. So I'm just going to single click, drag over to the right, and click again, and then drag up to the top. I'm still holding the shift key down. And now I'm going to let go of the shift key and just use the natural contour of the building itself and just kind of click around. And like I said, you don't have to be perfect. You're just basically following the natural contour, and it's just another way to express height, essentially. You're not really doing anything like line of sight or anything. It's just more or less blocking light. So this is just for aesthetics. It doesn't really do anything mechanically. So when I get down to this bottom part, I'm just going to double click on this last point, and that should take care of that. So that's really all I was trying to do here. And if you really wanted to, you could divide these window eaves so that you have places to hide on either side of these. So I can do that again. So I just single click here at this point and just double click down in here and kind of do something like that. So you kind of have an area where you can hide, or at least show that the shadow is different. And if you want to move a point, you can go to the selection tool and kind of move this over so it's a little bit more straight if you need. But generally, I don't adjust these until I'm done doing all the lines. That way, it helps you from going back and forth between the tool. That'll cut down on time. And again, if I hold the shift key, I can make this line straight without trying to perfectly place my pointer. So that's kind of just the rough idea of what I'm going to do with the terrain tool. And I'll do this other rooftop over here. So again, I'm in the line tool. I'm just going to use the natural contour of the building itself. Said you don't have to be perfect. Kind of come in through here to get the rough shape or the rough elements. Double click to end the line, and then I'm going to put a dividing line here and here, and that should take care of most of that. So there is a little bit more rooftop here, but I don't think I want to put so much of the occluders all over the place. I think that's enough for the higher parts of the roof. I'm going to say that these are probably about 10, 12 feet up, so they may not be as invisible as you'd hope. So now that we have that in there, what I'm going to do is go ahead and drag this over, and any things you want to pick up or fix at this point, this is where you would switch to the selection tool. And again, I want to clean up these two lines that I crossed over with. So if I single click on the line on this little point, it's going to only delete the segment. If I double click, it's going to delete the whole line. So I'm just going to single click and hit delete, single click, delete. And that gets rid of these extraneous lines that we don't need anymore. And we still have the points that we want. And that's pretty much it for that. So this is a kind of a, an easier way to work with the tools and not have to keep switching back and forth, back and forth. And then if there's any other adjustments you want to make, like here, you can see I didn't connect those together very well. So these are little things that you can do after you've drawn all your lines in. So this way you're not switching back and forth, 5 seconds. So this kind of helps mitigate time that you're putting into this. And time means everything when it comes to the type of stuff. So that's essentially it. I mean, I can go through and fix the stuff that I don't like or agree with, and I can, make my final adjustments just, while I'm still in the same tool or in the same mode, and then move on to something else. This is just a matter of taste and practice, and it really depends on what your needs are, the actual map. So I think that's pretty good, and then I'm going to put some occluders around the tree, and I think we're good. So when it comes to trees, I see a lot of people using a circle. It's okay, but it doesn't look very natural. So if you want to start with an ellipse, go ahead and go do that and kind of get the rough diameter of the tree itself or the bushes, whatever you think it needs. I'm going to do the same thing down here. So once you have that, if you leave it that way, it's going to look kind of horrible when it comes to your playing. So I'm going to go to the play mode, and I want to make sure you always put the grid on. So I forgot to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and put the grid on here. I think it's already set to 52. So let's see what we got. Yeah. And I want to change the color of the grid because I don't like the gray out, the kind of grayed out gray color. I'm going to go ahead and change it to yellow and kind of bump it up a little so we can kind of see it a little better. And now that I want to make sure that that was activated, which it is. Now I'm going to go over to play mode and turn on the line of sight and bring over a character, see what this stuff looks like. When I click on her token, you can see the shadow coming off these. So this is the shadow that's coming off that tree, which really doesn't look that great. I think it kind of looks, doesn't look very natural. So what I'm going to do is go back to the line of sight mode and just kind of drag these edges around so it's not so perfect, because this is a natural feature. So I might just kind of go and take these points and kind of move them out or in, and then kind of follow the contour a little bit of the actual tree itself. And what you'll find is that you'll get a little bit more natural look features instead of just the straight round line that you'll get when you circle. Works great for like statues and columns, but when it comes to natural features, kind of like these more jagged or less perfect shapes, it kind of helps with the natural contour. And you notice I'm not going right to the edge, so that's because I want it to look like some of the tree is lower than the other parts of it. I don't want to necessarily cover the entire tree. I want to be able to see something. That's basically just a way to kind of make that look a little bit more natural. Now, if you want anything to actually just cast shadow but not really block anything, like let's say this cart, for instance, there's a thing called Shadowcaster. It only works outdoors with ambient light. So if you put it indoors, it doesn't quite work the way you would think. It works with natural lighting. So right now in the lighting tool, under ambient lighting, I have the dawn thing set up here. So it's actually our dusk, sunset. And if I go over to the play mode, I have that activated. So in player mode, this is what this map now looks like. So when I activate this token, this is kind of what it looks like for the player. It doesn't look too bad. I mean, it's just casting a shadow. And if they get up top here, all it is blocking vision and light. So if they climb the tree, we would open this up, and then they'd be up in the tree. So if they're on the ground or they're not, right under the tree, we can. It also depends on how low the branches are. So now that we have that, there's also the shadow caster. So we can put a shadow on this cart since it's a little taller than most of the other stuff. So if you're going to put a shadow caster, you can go to the shadow caster tool, which is over here in the line of sight area. It's this last thing called shadow caster. And all I'm going to do is go to the line tool and just kind of trace around just inside here. And all this is going to do is cast shadow. It's not going to block anything. It's not going to do anything to harm this. And as you can see, the shadow's cast now, but it's in the wrong direction. So the original map was drawn with the sun coming from the north, shining south. So I'm going to go back into the lighting tool. I'm going to fix that where the light is casting in the correct direction. So I'm going to go back to the ambient, and you can see there's this direction button. And if you do something like this, you can actually see where the shadows are being. I want to go ahead and grab this and put the shadows there. And then the length of the shadows, right about the length of the actual shadows that were drawn on the map. So this is blocking vision. This is not a shadow. So this makes it so that Arla here cannot see through this. In this case, she can, but it's still casting a shadow. But in some of these cases, like the buildings, she can't see through those unless we open those up. And I left them open because I make it easier to climb. If I put line of sight on there for walls, like the red lines of occluders, it just becomes a pain to manage it. So I kind of left it as this so that it's easier for her to use the rooftops. I have a feeling that this player character might use the elevation to their advantage, especially against a deadly encounter. So this is just giving you an idea. But as far as the shadow from the actual, I'm going to turn off the line of sight temporarily, and I'll show you the shadow part. So this is the ambient lighting shadow. So I'm going to go back to lighting and back to the ambient lighting. And you can see you can change the length, like how long the shadows are. So I think about 50 is good. This kind of goes along with the way the shadows were painted on. And then the direction is straight to the south, so I'm going to where south, matching the direction of the natural shadows that were put. So that's something you have to think about when you get maps, is that a lot of them already have shadows baked into it. So that may not work out for you depending on what. So this layer here on this top here is the actual line of sight. So I'm going to label that so I know what that is, so I don't accidentally delete it. And when next time, if I want to put any more line of sight, I'll select that layer and start drawing any other. So I think that's pretty good as far as looters go. We don't really need to have anything too complex. And I think we've got enough complexity in here to really encounter. So that's another thing, is having a token on the map so that you can check your work as you go and make sure that it's on the combat tracker first. And then you have to be in play mode to interact with tokens. So if you're not in play mode, it's going to be difficult for you to see what's going on. And I actually have this on, and if I turn off this, meaning the enabled line of sight, turned it back on. And then this is the player preview mode. So you kind of have a hybrid mode between the GM and the player view. Or what you can do is turn it on for the player view and just totally see this is what the player sees. And then you can also toggle with Control P. So if you wanted to check it while things are happening, you can hold the Control P while you're in play mode, and that'll allow you to toggle between the player view and then the regular DM overview. I like to run it in player view quite a bit so that I can keep a track of what it looks like for each player or each NPC. And then if I need to see the overall map, I hit Control P to lessen the amount of occlusion. That's a different way of looking at it. You can run it either way. So this is just a way to track where she is on the map, also to check your occluders to see what they look like and how they're translating in shadow and what they're blocking for. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the encounter too, because we want to make sure that you understand that. So I'm going to remove the encounter so far that I have. I'll leave Arla on here. She's a player character. But I'm going to go to the menu at the bottom of the combat tracker, and I'm going to hit this garbage can, which is delete from tracker, and you can delete all non-friendlies, or you can delete only foes. So I'm just going to delete all non-friendly, and that's that. So now I have a clean slate. I just have Arla on here. Her starting location for this particular map is going to be down in this corner. So if I was setting this up, this would essentially be the point where she comes onto the map. This is where I would start her off. Now, the encounters that I have set up for this particular series that I've done from episode 1 to 3. I mean, I made all the tokens and all the, or at least help build all that stuff. And now I'm going to take the encounters that I made earlier. So I'll open up encounters. And I have a filter here so I don't get confused. So this is the Baldur's Gate solo encounter. So these are reinforcements for Wortimer if you were ever to need. I don't think so. It's already a deadly encounter as it. So here's the Night Watch. This is the two main guards that are going to be on the map. So if you have this particular encounter already built, which I think we did that in episode 3, you can link it to a map. So I'm going to take this link here on the top left corner and just kind of link it somewhere where it's visible on the map. That way, when you come to this location and you're ready to run it, you can just click on this. It brings up the encounter. The next thing you can do is actually pre-place these if you want. So there's two ways or two thoughts of doing this. So you may not know where you want them to start. So you just leave it like that, hit the down arrow, and then drag them from the combat tracker to the map and place them in real time. So you can do that on the fly if you want. So I just hit the down arrow, and I'm going to drag the tokens where I want them to start to begin the game. So this is something you can do, right before you start playing. You're not sure where they're going to start, but that's a way to do it too. Or conversely, I'm going to right click, delete the token, and I'm just going to delete these individual tokens for now. The other way to do this is I'm going to actually remove them from the combat tracker, delete only friendlies. So again, I'm going to pull up the encounter. This time, though, I'm going to pre-place them. So instead of just doing it on the fly, which is no problem doing that, it just depends on what you need. And then their faction is set to neutral, so they're not necessarily evil. And I'm going to drag them, and I'm dragging the actual token underneath this, not the token on the left, but the one that's underneath. There's going to be one guard over here, kind of watching this building and such, and then another one is going to be over here, this other part of the alley, maybe not even in full view yet. They'll drag that one and drop it over here. So now when Arla starts the encounter, she doesn't really see the guard because they're kind of behind this tree and behind the building. So it's just a matter of visibility at this point. So the guards are in a position where she can't necessarily see them. Now she might hear them, but she doesn't necessarily see them. So that's another issue you have to think about. I want to go ahead and lock these layers just in case I don't break them or anything. And now that they're placed, I can go back to play mode and kind of play around with the lighting and what they can see and that kind of stuff. Before the encounter starts, I'd be working on this in the game, right before, or a couple hours before the actual game. So that's one thing, and then I'm going to put Watch Captain Wortimer on the map too. So I'm going to unlock this and turn off the lighting for right now. Get confused. And then go ahead and drag Wortimer. Put him on the map. So I'm first going to pin the encounter. So Wortimer is actually going to be over here. He might be talking to the guard. I don't know. But I'm going to take Wortimer and drag him over here. That's where his starting location is. See, he may not show up for another round or two. But he's supposed to be kind of a deterrent more than the guy that you fight. Unless it's one-on-one. But in this case, Mortimer's pretty powerful, and fighting with Arla toe to toe, you might actually take her. So you got to be careful with encounter balance. So this encounter is very deadly. If I just leave these 2 guards up, it's not too bad. But once Mortimer comes, it can. So once I have him placed, I can close this. His token will disappear because I've already placed his token. And that's the same thing with this other encounter. So once I close it, they disappear. Now, if I wanted Mortimer to come back up, I want to make sure that this encounter that I had is pinned to the map, so I'd probably pin it over there. Now, when I actually go to run this, I put Arla on the map. I already have these pre-placed, so I have an idea of where these are coming up. So I'd click on the link to the encounter, hit the down arrow, and play it. And then what I had imagined for the encounter to go is after 5 rounds, Mortimer shows up. So I'm not even going to activate his encounter until I need to. So after that, once that happens, then we can determine how this is going to play out. So we might give her a chance to roll stealth for her first. She can move, she can hide, she can roll stealth, whatever. So that is something that you would essentially have to decide before the encounter. But basically, this is what I wanted to show you with the maps, is just kind of like you can use the occluders to kind of block vision or light, and then you can set the encounters up ahead of time. So when you're getting ready to run this, it's not going to be too difficult. And I'll do another video where actually to go through all the combat and the options. So one of the things I was hoping we could do before we end the series is show how the tables are going to come in. So I have these tables that I made for this particular game counter. So this would be something that you might use during your play to make it more interesting. So this would be a parcel that you can roll for her. So if I roll on the table, it's going to pop up this parcel. There's 3 throwing daggers. So I can add this to her sheet before we start playing. That's going to be your starting extra equipment on top of what she. So if I bring up her character sheet, all I have to do is drag this parcel inventory, and that'll set her. Left click and drag, that adds that to her inventory. And then when I go to the actions tab, I can change this to 3 for throwing daggers, and that's her extra weapon or extra tool. Night vision goggles. It's kind of random, so it may not necessarily lend itself or help you. Nonetheless, this is kind of want to just go over the map, how I deconstructed it, and how I set it up the line of sight earlier. So if you missed some of this, you can go back and watch. This will be in the archives. And don't forget about the other 3 that were before this, where we actually developed all the tokens, that built the encounters and that sort of thing. What I'll do in the next video is I'll take and actually run the encounter and scenarios and the outcomes and that sort of thing. So I think that's good enough. I don't want to make this video too long, but I did want to go over some of the things to do with the maps, and then pinning the encounters to the maps, and then pre-placing the encounters, that when you're actually playing, it's not going to be so hard. Some people run off the seat of their pants, so they don't have the time to place all this stuff. They just generate an encounter and hit go, which is fine. And then you drag the NPCs onto the map, or you can use this little token down here, drag them all at once on the bottom frame of the combat tracker, or you can do it one at a time depending on your needs. But nonetheless, you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I hope you have a good weekend, and see you around.